for a highway with no end, cutting through a desert that doesn't care if you live or die. It's 3 a.m. on Route 66. The sky is an empty void, the radio is dead, and the only thing keeping you awake is the rhythm of the road. Most drivers pray for a sign of life out there. But tonight, you're about to learn that the only thing worse than being completely alone in the dark is finding out you aren't. Lock your doors, turn down your dashboard lights, and adjust your mirrors. You're listening to Dead Air Studio, and tonight's drive might just be your last. The dashboard clock read 3:14 a.m. The green glow of the digital numbers was the only sharp thing left in the world. Everything else had dissolved into the fluid, heavy blackness of Route 66. David leaned closer to the steering wheel, his eyes burning from hours of staring at the dashed white lines. They sliced out of the dark, flashed under his headlights, and vanished beneath the hood like a sequence of Morse code he couldn't decode. The radio had died an hour ago, not into static, but into a thick, dead silence that felt heavy in his ears. Then, the high beams caught her. She wasn't standing on the shoulder, waving her arms like a desperate hitchhiker in a movie. She was just there, walking along the white line, her back to him. She wore a simple, pale sundress that looked entirely wrong for a chilly desert night. David tapped the brakes, the tires groaning against the asphalt. In this expanse of nothingness, leaving someone out here felt like a death sentence. He pulled the sedan over a few yards ahead of her. The gravel crunched loudly under his tires. He rolled down the passenger window. The desert air that rushed in wasn't dry and warm. It was unnaturally cold, carrying a faint copper scent, like pennies left out in the rain. "Hey!" David called out, his voice sounding thin against the vast night. "You need a lift? It's freezing out here." She stopped. For a long, agonizing second, she didn't move. Then, she turned. There were no hollow eyes or bloody gashes. In the dim reflection of his taillights, she looked perfectly ordinary. Perhaps 19 or 20, with dark hair tied loosely back. But as she walked toward the car, David felt a sudden, inexplicable prickle of dread at the base of his neck. Her movement was too smooth. On the loose gravel of the shoulder, her feet made absolutely no sound. She opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. "Thank you," she said. Her voice wasn't raspy or ghostly. It was incredibly soft, almost like a whisper spoken directly into his ear despite the distance between their seats. "No problem," David said, shifting the car back into drive. "I'm David. Where are you headed?" She didn't answer. She just stared straight ahead through the windshield. David swallowed hard and looked back at the road. As the miles bled together, the silence inside the car grew dense. David tried to shake the unease creeping up his spine. He stole a glance at her in the dim, ambient light of the dashboard. She sat perfectly rigid, her hands folded neatly in her lap. That was when the first subtle wrongness hit him. The heater was blasting at full speed, blowing hot air directly toward the passenger side, yet David could see his own breath misting faintly in the air whenever he exhaled. When she spoke, or when she simply sat there, no breath left her lips. The air around her remained perfectly clear. "Visiting family?" David tried again, his throat dry. "I'm going home," she murmured. David nodded, keeping his eyes glued to the dark highway. He reached down to adjust the rear-view mirror, intending to check the road behind him, but his eyes caught her reflection instead. His heart skipped a violent beat.
The mirror showed the empty leather passenger seat. The headrest was clear. The seatbelt hung loose against the frame, but when he looked out of the corner of his eye, she was sitting right there, less than 2 feet away. David's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. "You're tired," he told himself, a desperate mantra echoing in his mind. Hallucinations, hypnotic highway syndrome, just keep driving. "Are you cold?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't feel it anymore," she replied. He risked another glance at her hands. They were resting on the fabric of her dress. The skin was pale, but it was the fingernails that caught his attention. They weren't dirty or broken from walking along the highway. They were entirely blue. Not the vibrant blue of nail polish, but the dull, bruised shade of a body starved of oxygen. And as the car bounced slightly over a pothole, her body didn't sway or adjust to the movement. She remained perfectly static, suspended in her own rigid space. The dashboard clock clicked to 3:45 a.m. The headlights suddenly flickered, dipping into darkness for a terrifying fraction of a second before snapping back on. In that brief flash of blackness, the smell of copper in the car spiked, turning into the suffocating stench of stagnant water and old, buried earth. "David," she whispered. It was the first time she had used his name. He hadn't told her his name. "Yeah?" he choked out, terror finally taking deep root in his chest. His foot wanted to slam on the brakes, to fling the door open and run into the desert. But the dark highway felt like a trap closing in. "Do you know what happens to the things left out here?" Before he could answer, a sudden, violent chill bloomed from the passenger side.
The windows of the car instantly fogged over with a thick layer of frost, completely blinding him from the outside world. David panicked, slamming on the brakes. The car skidded, tires shrieking against the asphalt, before coming to a jarring halt dead center in the lane. The engine sputtered and died. The headlights vanished. Total, consuming darkness engulfed them. David sat frozen, his chest heaving, listening to the ticking of the cooling engine. He could hear his own frantic, ragged breathing, but beneath it, he heard something else, a faint, rhythmic clicking sound. Click, click, click. It was the sound of her fingernails gently tapping against the plastic dashboard. He couldn't see her, but he could feel the absolute freezing void radiating from the seat next to him. The air was so cold it burned his throat. He pressed himself against the driver's side door, pulling his knees up, terrified to reach out into the dark in case his hand brushed against her skin. "Who are you?" he whispered into the black, tears of sheer primal terror leaking from his eyes. No answer came. Only the slow, steady click, click, click of her fingers in the dark. David closed his eyes, squeezed them shut until his eyelids hurt, and began to pray. He stayed like that, curled into a ball against the door, waiting for a touch that never came, listening to a sound that never stopped. A sharp, blinding ray of light hit David's eyes. He gasped, bolting upright. His head struck the driver's side window. Sunlight was pouring through the windshield, bright and warm. The desert landscape was washed in brilliant gold and beige under a clear morning sky. He looked to his right. The passenger seat was completely empty. The door was locked from the inside. The frost on the windows had melted, leaving thin, watery streaks running down the glass. David sat there for a long time, his heart hammering a dull rhythm against his ribs. The terror of the night felt distant under the harsh glare of the sun, like a nightmare fading upon waking. He let out a long, shaky breath, shaking his head. Sleep deprivation, he thought, reaching for the ignition. A waking dream, that's all it was. The engine cranked to life on the first try. The radio roared with loud, upbeat country music, making him jump. He quickly turned it down, leaning forward to put the car in gear. Then, his eyes fell on the dashboard. Right above the glove compartment, in the thin layer of dust covering the plastic, were 5 distinct, perfectly round circles where the dust had been wiped clean. And directly below them, scratched faintly but deeply into the hard black vinyl, were 4 words. Thank you for stopping. The sun always comes up. The shadows always retreat. But as David learned on that lonely stretch of asphalt, the morning light doesn't change what happened in the dark. It only reveals the scars left behind. The next time you're driving down a deserted highway at night and you see a figure waiting on the shoulder, ask yourself, are you fast enough to step on the gas? Or will your curiosity make you pull over? If this story kept your eyes on the rearview mirror, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment with your own highway encounters, and turn on notifications. Until next time, keep your doors locked, watch the road ahead, and remember, the air is never truly empty here at Dead Air Studio. Sleep tight.